Well, protests in Bangladesh are seeing no signs of coming down or quelling. Sparked by a decision of the High Court to reinstate quotas in civil services, the demonstrations have intensified and the death toll has now gone up to 39. Protesters have taken to the streets in the fear of losing their job opportunities. They contend the 30% reservation given to the descendants of the freedom fighters and demand to scrap this particular provision. The demonstrators are demanding the quotas to be replaced with a merit-based system. Meanwhile, the Bangladesh government has moved the apex court in the country to overturn the High Court's order. The Sheikh Hasina-led government maintains that while veterans deserve the highest respect regardless of political affiliation, the provision of keeping quotas is a policy decision now. Yet, the violence continues. As the death toll rises, several government buildings have been torched and vandalized. Protesters have stormed the headquarters of the state broadcaster, Bangladesh Television. They have also set fire to the National Disaster Management Agency in Dhaka. Following days of violent confrontations, the government has imposed an internet shutdown. As Bangladesh grapples with the escalating protests, let's have a look at what Bangladesh quota system is all about and what the two sides are maintaining at this particular time. We'll also be talking about this with our guest, Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor, former diplomat, is with us on the broadcast. Pathikrit Pine, international affairs expert, joins us on the show. Gautam Mukherjee, senior journalist, also with us on the broadcast. I'm going to go to the big screen and try and explain what is actually going on. The Bangladesh quota system. It was introduced in 1972, a year after Bangladesh was liberated. The system reserves 56% of government jobs, and this is what the quota looks like. 30%, the maximum percentage for families of freedom fighters, 1% for disabled individuals, 5% for indigenous communities, 10% for underdeveloped districts, and 10% for women as well. 44% of the seats for selection on merit. Also, the protesters are demanding this. What they're saying is the cancellation of the existing quota system for government jobs. The government of Bangladesh is saying that moved Bangladesh Supreme Court to scrap High Court verdict on quotas. So opposite opinions are there, opposite expectations and opposite results as well. They're also saying that the quota for freedom fighters should be scrapped, and that is unconstitutional is what they say. Bangladesh government says that veterans deserve the highest respect regardless of their political affiliation, and this is also something that they have been trying to introduce for quite some time. Retain quota is what the protesters are saying for minority groups and disabled people, but when it comes to giving quota to kin and kith of the veterans, it should be scrapped. The Bangladeshi government lashed back, said that provision of keeping quotas is a policy decision now. We cannot do much about it. What's done is done. The protesters also want the quota to be replaced with merit-based system, which is of course justified. The Bangladeshi government goes on to say that they will respect Bangladesh Supreme Court's decision. It is the highest authority in the country, and it also is a tenet of democracy. The protesters are also saying that a new law which establishes a maximum of 5% quota for jobs should be put into place. The Bangladesh government says that vows that meting out justice for lives lost during clashes is something that Bangladeshi government has also said. All right, we'll talk about this with our guests. Gautam, I'll begin with you. We spoke about this the other day as well. These protests are not dying down. We also need to understand that Bangladesh is on the anvil of further trouble. Although the internet has been shut down, it's not really going to make a difference because the number of protesters and the people who are against this new quota system is growing on a daily, if not an hourly basis.
Well, Vineet, I do think that it will be modified because this is a protest of young people, and young people are hot under the collar, and 39 of them have given up their lives already in this protest. That's quite a large number. It's ironic that in India we have it the other way around. Every caste and subcaste and creamy layer and lower and all these people come along and say, give us reservations. In Bangladesh, they're talking of merit as the basis. So on the one hand, what they are asking for is commendable. And on the other, if you look at the quotas as you've just described, they are to do with the birth of Bangladesh, the people who contributed towards it. It is another matter whether their descendants, all these years later, it's what, over 50 years, should continue to receive special privileges. Islam does not recognize caste. It is meant to be all one lot. At least that's the theory of it, the Sunnis. And so will this be removed? I can't see it being removed entirely, but I can see it being diluted. Vineet.
Pradeep Kapoor, how do you look at this? And how is the world viewing what's happening in Bangladesh at this point in time? And Bangladesh, as we all know, has been a country which has been susceptible to, very volatile to, ethnic and communal clashes in the past as well. But this is a different fight altogether, isn't it, sir?
Yes, Vineet. It is a very important matter because Bangladesh has been going through difficult times for quite a long time now. And though it has done somewhat all right in terms of its economic development and progress, on the political front, there has been a lot of upheaval for quite a bit of time, actually, because even when they were trying to have their elections, the US government was insisting that the current Bangladesh regime, which was in power at that time, should resign and have a sort of a presidential rule for the elections so that there is no government which is able to influence the outcome of the elections. The Bangladesh regime steadfastly refused. So Begum Khalida, who is in the opposition, has been out of power for a long time now. Her party boycotted the elections, and thereafter the current government again came back into power. So the protests have been going on for a long time on various issues, including political. Before the elections, there was also a very serious issue about the sanctions which were applied on the Rapid Action Battalion of Bangladesh. The Rapid Action Battalion is a force which tries to prevent rapes of minors and violence and attacks on the minority community and smuggling and drug trafficking and other aspects. Now, they had been labeled as a force which has led to the disappearance of people, killing of people, etc. And they had been sanctions had been applied on them. Thereafter, the American Hindu Coalition in US discussed with the Bangladeshi authorities and with the US government and applied pressure on the US government to lift those sanctions because the Rapid Action Battalion was also in a way responsible for giving a feeling of security to some of the Hindus who have been otherwise in not a very good position in Bangladesh in terms of the attacks. So protests, killings, violence has continued for a long time. The Hindu population in Bangladesh has gone down in very significant terms, in terms of a very high percentage at partition, which was maybe over 20%, about 22%, to less than about 8% today. So there has been violence. It has been a country associated with a lot of violence all through. And now we see even the protest against quotas, which could have been very peaceful, have turned violent, and so many people have died. Almost 39 people are already dead. And there's no signs of these violent protests abating. So I really don't know how they will find a solution because this government is in power with a significant majority. And they may not bend down early enough. As our co-panelist has said, that they may have to bend at some time on this aspect because it is more than 53 years old since the independence of Bangladesh in 1971. And to suddenly wake up and say that the children of the freedom fighter or the grandchildren of the freedom fighters now require quotas, I think it's a little too political a gambit and it may not wash. And the protest may continue for some more time till some solution is arrived at. Either they have to adjust it in some way or the other, or the protesters will have to be put down with even more violence which will lead to a very bad name for Bangladesh, because even during the elections, the US government had threatened sanctions over Bangladesh if they didn't resign. They didn't. So the American Hindu coalition again worked to help them to some extent in the US, and those sanctions didn't get applied. But the possibility of sanctions on Bangladesh is still very open. It is not a closed chapter. So if the protests continue and they expand, then again the question of sanctions on the current regime will be taken up by the US government. Back to you, Vineet.
All right. Pathakrit, in fact, a lot of people and experts are saying that it's a war-like situation that is brewing in Bangladesh at this point in time. A number of blackouts have taken place. The banking system, the telecommunications, the country is in fact dipping and slipping into this hole that, will be difficult for it to come out of. And considering that the gains that Bangladesh has made very recently, Pathakrit, in terms of its economy, do you think this is perhaps going to be denting those prospects?
No, Vineet, just on a lighter note, I want to say this. If sanctions are imposed on Bangladesh by US, if more sanctions, then who should impose sanctions on US for not being able to protect a presidential candidate? That is something that the world must introspect first of all. Now, let me say certain data. These are data. This is not my, thing. First of all, the quota for the freedom fighters have been in place from 1972. It was in 2018 that Sheikh Hasina government scrapped the quota. The case went to High Court. The High Court reinstated the quota. The Supreme Court again, struck off that verdict, but there is a status quo it has asked to maintain for 4 weeks. Now, the protesters are asking Sheikh Hasina that you must scrap it now. So Sheikh Hasina government, to the best of my understanding, is saying let the court take final decision on it. Now, look at how the things have been twisted. First of all, let me give you information which Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina made public in May 2024, where she stated that a white man in January this year had offered her that if she allows a particular country to set up an airbase in Bangladesh, then her government would have no problem. But otherwise, there can be issues. Now, if you look at what is happening right now, there are a lot of telltale signs of what happened in Arab Spring, what happened in India during the anti-CIA protest, and you would see where while the Sheikh Hasina government is on the same page with the protesters, but the protesters are protesting against Sheikh Hasina government. So the initial protest happened again online. It's like the Arab Spring, which was also called the Twitter war, the Twitter Spring. Then an umbrella organization suddenly comes out of nowhere and then galvanizes the entire protest against the government of Sheikh Hasina. Though I am not playing a part, I'm not trying to be a devil's advocate on their behalf. All I'm saying is that technically it is a Supreme Court issue. All I'm saying is that the Sheikh Hasina government actually wants that to be scrapped, had already scrapped it once. The problem with the Sheikh Hasina government is this: they should not have used firepower. They should not have killed students. Look at what Prime Minister Modi did during anti-CA protest and the anti-farm law protest. In spite of a lot of criticism, Modi government did not use firepower. It had to, it led to some kind of injury among the policemen, but you have been able to contain a larger movement that was perhaps kept in abeyance, some people had that in mind. Look at how Arab Spring led to a civil war situation in Syria. Look at how Arab Spring led to a civil war situation in Tunisia. It was well orchestrated. And now look at what the protesters are asking for. They're asking the expatriate Bangladeshis not to send money through the Bangladeshi formal banking system. Whereas, why? Because Bangladesh is a country which depends overwhelmingly on its expatriates sending the remittance. So this is an issue which has very little to do, to the best of my understanding, about the quota issue. Because the quota issue eventually will be scrapped. But it has been used as a ploy to galvanize the country against a government. I am not saying that what white man is responsible, but look at the chain of events which has happened. This is where the issue comes. And if you ask me what should European Union do or what should US do, I think the first thing they should do is to take their own country's affair in the right way. EU is on the verge of implosion. Each of the countries, we have seen in France what is happening after the election results. We have seen what is happening in many of the Western European countries. We don't even want to talk about United States and what happens there. Okay, it has become an epitome of a banana republic. So, frankly speaking, Bangladesh should introspect, no doubt. Do not use force and be very careful about these protests, which looks very, you might look at it as something which has happened naturally, but it is not a natural protest. The telltale signs are so much similar to what have happened in Arab Spring, what happened in India, that I am compelled to link it with what the white man said that time. I am saying only one thing, Vineet. India should be careful, starting from what happened in United States to what happened in France to what has happened in Bangladesh. In today's era of social media, where you can trigger something with the use of algorithms and AI, you can actually manipulate how much a particular disinformation can be flown into, pushed into a particular region. And then you create that emotion. Yes, there are problems because Bangladesh refuses to take a side, because of many other factors. So, it's not a very easy situation. And let me tell you something happening in Bangladesh, whichever side is responsible, is not good news for India. Instability over there or instability over there is not good news for India. So we should be very careful on various issues, starting from the stability within our country, take lessons from what happened in Bangladesh, and ensure that simple things are not allowed to be amplified to trigger another wave of protest in India. Because we have seen in this election itself, where the tech media, tech giants had a role to play in terms of what they did of alleged foreign interference, which even the government now more or less accepts, if not directly, then indirectly. So Bangladesh is an example of what can happen. Look at what is happening in Myanmar. There are a lot of countries, especially a particular country from the West, which is interested to create problem in this region because they're not happy. Also, again, it's an inference. I'm not trying to draw a direct connection. A lot of countries are not happy with India trying to be Atmanirbhar in its foreign policy and everything else. So you would see a lot of problems being created, and the problems need not come always from Pakistan.
That's a good point. Ambassador Kapoor, Pathikrit in fact has made a very important point. What does this mean for India? We can't be, sitting cozy with our backs towards Bangladesh when all of this is going on.
Well, I'm very happy that Pathikrit has made those points, because those are very relevant and very valid and very important, because the disruptions which are taking place in countries which do not toe the Western line is very clear, and the threat of sanctions and other issues are always there at the back. Like, for example, they will label countries of particular concern, and then they will impose sanctions, or they will say that they are put in this list or that list. So those sort of threats are always there, and I am also following Myanmar very closely these days. It is undergoing a lot of difficult scenario in terms of the efforts by various forces which are ranged against the government there, and the impetus which is being given to those forces by people from different countries, including US and China and the evangelicals here and the rebels and the Rohingyas. So it has become a very difficult situation for Myanmar, and it is on the border of India, and it has similar problems like the northeast of India. So how does one combat those challenges so that India itself does not get impacted is also a very important factor, because those sort of issues can be created in India also. We have seen that happen many times, and non-issues can be made into issues because of the money flowing in and the instigation done and the AI and the interference through social media. So those are important lessons for everybody. For Bangladesh, if the court is still to decide and take a decision on the matter, then that has to be announced very widely to the public, because the Western media narrative and even our narrative is not strong enough to announce the real issue very clearly, or to explain the real issues very clearly. That is also very essential, because once you say that the issue is in court and let the court decide as one of the most important counter arguments, then automatically a lot of people in the world will understand that these are, elements who are being inspired to indulge in violence by some non-nationalistic forces, and it is possible to control it thereafter. But to continue with the violence is not acceptable. That is absolutely clear. And the government also has to tamp down its violence and see how to deal with the protests in a peaceful manner. Back to you, Vineet.
Gautam, is there a peaceful way of dealing with this now that the government has tried everything, including the shutdown of internet, but the protests seem to be getting heavier and more violent by the day?
Well, Vineet, this isn't the first time that Sheikh Hasina has faced violent protest, and she has quelled it every single time with a very firm hand. And in these Islamic countries, the talk of parleying and negotiations don't work so well. You need a strong hand. That's what's done in Iran. That's what's done in Bangladesh. It's succeeded 3-4 times in the past. This business of the Islamic opposition trying to topple Sheikh Hasina is not new. And any outside instigator, and I accept this is very much the case in Bangladesh as it is in India, as it is in our entire what used to be the third world, whether we are coming up in life or not. It is very difficult for the West to accept that we might be, deserving of a place at the high table and have to be dealt with on equal terms. They just can't digest it, and they just have difficulty coming to terms with anything except the old way. The old way, sanctions have failed everywhere. They keep doing it. This business of threatening people, governments, toppling them, regime changes, this is all becoming a little tired in terms of what it actually achieves. Because if you think in terms of what is good for Bangladesh, then Hasina seems to be it. That is one of the reasons why after the opposition is quelled, she always wins. And it isn't true that she's able to doctor the elections to an extent that the rest of the voting public is also cowed into voting for her. It is fairly clear that once you put the troublemakers away, the rest are with, and that is why she has survived for this long and will probably do so for the rest of her days. But this strong government, in a relative sense, is a bit too much for those who want to manipulate Bangladesh. And they include China, the US, Europe. There are various people who would like a pliant. What happened just now when Sheikh Hasina went to China? She went there for 5 days, cut it short, came back after 4. She expected 500 billion. She got 100 million. And she was quite miffed. Because on the one hand, lots of agreements were signed, but they were signed at Li Qiang's level. Xi gave her 20 minutes. 20 minutes. So protocol also wasn't observed. So things are in flux. And who is behind what is a matter of conjecture. One thing is certain: whether the outsiders would like her out or weakened or in trouble, they are working through the Islamists. The Islamists will be easier to control because they'll be all over the place. They're not used to power. They haven't been in power for many years. Their leader, Khalida, is ill and practically bedridden. Her, if you like, her factotums are youngsters. They haven't really done very much anywhere in anything apart from, fanning the flames. So I am sure that this time, like others, more people will die, no doubt, but they will be crushed. And that is what Hasina does well, and she's going to do it. Never mind the internet and the Western media; they are always ready. If you like, the articles are pre-written. All they do is put the headline and publish.
Right, we've run out of time. Quick comment from Pathakrit. He's been trying to get something. Pathakrit, a minute, and then we wrap up.
Vinith, along with this, whatever is happening right now, I have been observing for the last almost 1 year, a persistent anti-India narrative has been created in Bangladesh. Not that India was very popular over there. So a persistent anti-Bangladesh, anti-Sheikh Hasina and an anti-India movement is going on parallelly. Number two, Rapid Action Battalion, for whatever is said, has been ruthless on radical Islamist groups, on narcotics syndicates. In one day, they shot dead, to the best of my information, 200 such narcotics agents. And then the West sanctions those who are against narcotics and extremists. Third, why I say that interference aspect, in Bengal and potentially possibly in Assam as well, you open the social media sites, all the feed that you get is of Bangladesh right now, of this movement. So even then imagine the condition within Bangladesh where you don't even know the truth, but the emotive aspect of it is so much being pushed, of students be bleeding or crying, that you start feeling that the government must be wrong. And I think, yes, Iron Hand is fine. What Gautamji mentioned is absolutely okay in certain countries, but you need to fight the disinformation machinery at the same time. That is where many of the developing countries, including India, has to do a lot of work, because you don't even know where it has started from, and suddenly it has become a huge cyclone. You don't know how to deal with it. So the disinformation, so you need a counter disinformation architecture in your country. You need to see how the telltale signs are, where I think a lot of work is needed. And that's where I think social media needs at least a certain kind of control, because it can create havoc in any country, which as per their masters.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.